Good evening and welcome to this latest episode of the Pandemic Podcast, where tonight we ask the question, what does it really take to change direction? What does it really take to break through of the situation that we're finding ourselves in now? And what can we do to find a genuine alternative, and how can we be the captain of our own destiny within the situation we find ourselves in? So if you're here and you're watching this, then it'll already be clear to you that the pandemic response has gone far beyond a public health issue alone. It's quite clearly observable that this crisis is being used to advance a top-down, centralized, and authoritarian global governance. But to what end is this technocratic future heading towards? Some of us have some idea where that could be heading. For others, it may be unknown. But accordingly, it becomes very difficult under these circumstances to understand how to resist or find a way out. So is there a better way that we can change direction? My guest tonight is committed to taking massive action as an entrepreneur and as an activist, as part of the global movement of those now urgently exploring the practical solutions needed to build a truly alternative society. John Bush is a Texan, a father of two, founder of the Live Free Academy, host of the Live Free podcast, and has been questioning the overarching narrative for over 20 years. A cryptocurrency early adopter, he is now focused on encouraging others to follow his lead and start building local intentional communities, ideally away from the urban centers already earmarked as the technocratic megacities of the future. In 2005, he laid out his vision for Freedom Cells, a peer-to-peer mutual aid group that worked together to find freedom for those involved, and now has over 25,000 participants across the globe. He recently hosted the Greater Reset events, which is how I first came across his work, with the intent to help all people find community and liberty by providing practical steps and knowledge for co-creating a world that respects individual liberty. So join me tonight, where I'll be exploring with John what are the steps that we can take in our day-to-day lives to exit from this matrix and build a better world. How can decentralized technology and cryptocurrency help us to find more freedom? And why are so many people now looking to leave the cities and build intentional communities? John, a huge welcome to the Pandemic Podcast. Great to have you with me here tonight.
Thanks for having me. That was some introduction. I'm impressed.
Yes. Good to. Yeah, I mean, there's so much we can explore here tonight. We've got an hour, so we're gonna explore some of these things. But I must ask you, John. You know, you've obviously been exploring the world as we know it for the last 20 years. What's been your take on current events as they've unfolded over the last 12 to 18 months, to give us some context?
Well, I've been a conspiracy researcher for almost 20 years now. And, you know, the frightening thing is that for the longest time, we spoke about the quote unquote New World Order, or, the creation of a global totalitarian surveillance police state. We spoke of it as though it was some far off thing. You got to be careful. You got to watch this. Look what they're trying to do. Look what they're setting up. This is what the world is going to be like in the future if we don't do something now. And with the advent of COVID-19, the pandemic, those plans have accelerated at breakneck speeds. And now we find ourselves in a situation where what used to be written off as silly or kooky is now very much a reality, especially in some areas like Australia and Canada and obviously China, of course. So I think that what's happening now is extremely alarming, but it also presents a wonderful opportunity for we, the people that care about freedom and bodily autonomy and self-direction. It presents an opportunity for us to really redouble our efforts and to do a greater reset, to build some beautiful things. So I try to give meaning to things in a way that'll empower me rather than put me in a state of victimhood. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm grateful to be alive in these amazing times, because we really can do some good work for the future of humanity.
I mean, this is certainly a view I share myself. I think a lot of people are feeling challenged by this situation. But for me, wherever I see a challenge, I see an opportunity, and I do share that view that this is an opportunity for a greater reset or a great awakening and a great shift in how we transform the future of humanity. I suppose one of the biggest challenges we've seen is, this kind of top-down, authoritarian, overly centralized setup that we've seen expand over recent years, almost like a boiling frog, but really come to a head in the last 18 months where people have really started to feel it. But there's been a real lack of genuine alternative for people to look towards. So what are some of the things that you've been exploring in order to help people to find that alternative?
Well, with the work we did with the Greater Reset and my activism and entrepreneurship in general, I adopt the exit and build strategy, which I thought was already a thing for years now, but turns out it was actually Derek Brose that coined the term. He was one of the co-producers of the Greater Reset. He does great work with the Conscious Resistance Network. So the idea is, there's all sorts of different strategies and ways that we can get from here, a statist, tyrannical society, to there, a free society. And a lot of people focus their time and energy on political means, working within the system, lobbying, getting people elected, voting. And that's something that I did myself for, 6, 7, 8 years and was somewhat successful at it. But really, they were empty victories, because while we did stop the growth of tyranny and slow down the growth of tyranny, in reality, we didn't create more freedom. And that got me thinking, what are some other ways that we can go about this? And along that time, I arrived at the idea that why don't we just go ahead and build the free society that we all deserve right now? Why don't we begin creating alternative institutions that run in parallel to the existing infrastructure of society that's centralized, top-down, hierarchical? So it's like a yin and a yang kind of thing. They want to create more centralization, more surveillance, more control. We want to further decentralization, privacy, and freedom. And so there's a variety of different areas of our lives. And I always like to start practical, right? Although I do like to project into the future and to begin with the end in mind, which is one of the 7 habits of highly effective people, to begin with the end in mind of what ideal society are we going for? And I have a vision we could talk about later of intentional communities and a confederation of intentional communities existing outside of the smart cities, trade networks and mutual defense compacts and all that good stuff. But to get more practical, it's what can people do in their lives now? Things that aren't illegal, that aren't risky, that are totally attainable. And there's a variety of different things in different areas of our life when it comes to financial. If you have a major bank like Chase Manhattan, which is the Rockefellers, of course, or JP Morgan or Wells Fargo, Bank of America, these are mostly corrupt institutions. HSBC, for example, laundered money for the Mexican drug cartels. So it's if you have one of these mega banks, you can pull your money out of one of those checking accounts or savings accounts and get set up with the local credit union, right? It's a step in the right direction. It's not still the best thing you could do. The best thing you can do, in my opinion, is to create barter networks to support one another, trade amongst one another, and get involved in cryptocurrency, which is something that I'm very passionate about. That's completely decentralized, no banks whatsoever. It's not even a fiat currency, a government fiat currency. It's a completely new currency that is basically uncontrollable in many ways. For folks that are reliant on the grocery store or the supermarket for all of their food, they can work with local farmers markets. They can set up gardens in their backyard. For people that rely on the local police for the provision of security and safety, in certain countries, they can purchase firearms and learn how to use them safely and proficiently. In other areas, they can learn self-defense mechanisms or create a neighborhood watch group. When it comes to people's health, right, if they're wholly dependent on pharmaceuticals and allopathic medicine and they find themselves in this reactionary trap where the pills that they're prescribed lead to more side effects and more pills and they're just not well, right, then they can explore alternative health modalities, Eastern medicine, natural remedies, plant-based medicine, and try to find a more holistic wellness within themselves. And there's a whole wide variety of areas. When it comes to social organizations, a big picture one, that's what we're aiming to do with the Freedom Cell Network. We now have over 25,000 like-minded people that are all working together on common goals. And ultimately, we want to create our own social organization so we can opt out of the government, but we don't have to rely on the government for social security or for defense or for making decisions as a group. There's all sorts of different structures and opportunities. And for people that are concerned with the direction that the world is going, it's contingent upon us to take responsibility for the situation we find ourselves in and to build back better, to create a better world, right? To borrow from the Great Reset term. So yeah, there's a whole wide variety of areas, and it's all about just starting somewhere and taking stock in where you're at, giving yourself an honest assessment of how bought in you are to the matrix, because we all are in one way or another, and then coming up with a plan, strategies, and some goals to slowly but surely, or quickly, if you want to take massive action with it, pull yourself out of these structures and put yourself into the new parallel competing economies and institutions.
Yeah, I think this has been rumbling. One of my favorite books of recent times is The People versus Tech by Jamie Bartlett, which really spoke about the undercurrent of this excess centralization, but really pointed towards the solution of this decentralized opportunity through cryptocurrency and transforming the way we operate on a community level. I'd like to unpack one of the areas that affects our lives significantly is finances, and you've been an early adopter of cryptocurrency. It's something that we're really looking to explore more in depth as a solution here on the Pandemic Podcast. Got some great guests coming up in this space. Tell us a little bit about your journey into cryptocurrency and why you see cryptocurrency as a real opportunity to transform the way we manage our day-to-day finances.
Okay. Well, I was a libertarian and an anarchist before I learned about cryptocurrency. And interestingly enough, my first child, she was born in 2011, and she doesn't have a social security number, which is the tracking number for the federal government here in the United States. And my father and other people were like, well, what about when she wants to open a bank account when she gets older, John? And I said, by the time she comes of age where she's going to be dealing with finances and need some sort of money institution, I feel confident that there will be an alternative currency that would have come along, whether we created it or someone else did. And this was, I didn't know cryptocurrency existed, right? Bitcoin started in 2008, 2009. And I just knew that, things are going that direction. There's so much innovation and so many alternatives. And then sure enough, a year or two later, I learned about cryptocurrency. But before then, my ex-wife and I, we were encouraging people to use silver dimes. In the US, pre-1964 dimes, quarters, half dollars were 90% silver. So we were encouraging people to use sound money and to create these little directories and to barter with one another. So I was always into alternative currencies and competing currencies. And when I learned about cryptocurrency and really understood its value, it wasn't until I used it for the first time that I was like, wow. I was talking about it, paying it lip service. But the first time I used it actually was to pay Derek Brose, who was writing for this project I had called the Liberty Beat. It was a daily radio news service. And he's a total agorist, meaning he's completely outside the system, no paying taxes, no checking account, anything like that. And he was like, hey, can you pay me with that? I don't have a credit card or checking account, so how can you pay me and it still be outside the system? He was 3 hours away from me in Texas. So I was going to Western Union to wire him money, and it cost like 7%. It was totally inconvenient and a waste of time to wait in line at the local grocery store. And I thought, why don't I just try to send him some cryptocurrency? I've been talking about it for a year or two now. So I set up a wallet, got him to set up a wallet, sent him some Bitcoin, and it was just the ease of use and how fast, and the fact that it was completely outside the system and untraceable at the time, we thought. That was pretty special for me. So that was how I really realized, like, wow, this is a really valuable tool. And so I think that it's important for people's finances, and it helps with our freedom because it's decentralized. So you don't have to trust a third party in order to maintain the validity or the legitimacy or the integrity of the network. With the United States dollar and other fiat currencies, for example, there's banksters and central bankers and politicians and bureaucrats that are creating monetary policy and just printing money out of thin air and using it to fund their programs. But with cryptocurrency, most cryptocurrencies, there's a fixed cap. There's a fixed supply, which means that it's inflation proof, right? Although there's a fixed rate of inflation that can be anticipated and that can't be manipulated or changed. That's one of the big values in itself. But another great benefit is that it allows us to do business with one another, and there's not anything any government or bureaucracy can do to stop us. For example, one of my businesses, I sell Kratom and CBD and Delta-8 THC. These are natural health products, plant medicine. Kratom helps people with stress, anxiety, overcoming dependency on opioids, for example. But the federal government's not very fond of it, of course, because they are in bed with the pharmaceutical companies. And a lot of people use this plant medicine in order to quit taking pharmaceuticals. My girlfriend stopped taking Adderall with the help of Kratom, for example. And so the federal government pressures the banks, which pressure credit card companies not to process transactions or service these types of businesses. So I've had multiple credit card companies and credit card processing applications like PayPal and Stripe and Cash App all shut me down, but I'm able to accept cryptocurrency, also e-check, but cryptocurrency, there's no one that can get in the way between me and my clients when it comes to doing business. I think there's a lot of opportunity. Just recently, I've been getting into decentralized finance. That is basically most of the services that people are accustomed to using with centralized finance, traditionally using a bank or a stockbroker or an investment firm, we can now do in a decentralized way. Lower fees, higher interest whenever you're earning money, and no middleman that takes a cut or that you have to trust. So recently, we bought a new 10-acre homestead and we got it painted. And in order to pay for the painting, I took some cryptocurrency. I supplied it to a decentralized application called Compound. It's a DeFi DApp, a decentralized application. And I used that cryptocurrency as collateral. That cryptocurrency is supplied, it's earning interest. I was able to take out a loan with that cryptocurrency as collateral, convert that loan into fiat dollars, pay for the house to get painted, and then slowly but surely pay that loan back and get my cryptocurrency back. So for people that are holding cryptocurrency long-term, this gives them access to the capital associated with it, gives them liquidity with that cryptocurrency. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many different financial services that we can now do without having to rely on a bank or a licensed broker at all. And I really think it's just the beginning of people taking control of their financial lives.
Fantastic. Now, I think for a lot of people, there's still a certain mystique and mystery around cryptocurrency and the kind of perceived barriers to entry. Now, I know we could spend the whole episode talking about the mechanics of getting into crypto, but certainly this last 18 months, I think, has prompted a lot more people to reevaluate their financial choices. And the amount of people I'm getting approach our show just for guidance in this area. But without going into kind of technical details, what do you think? Where do we think we're at in terms of the adoption curve of cryptocurrency, and where do you think it will go next, so that people can get a sense of, where crypto is going?
Well, if folks are looking for instruction when it comes to cryptocurrency, I recently did a workshop specifically geared towards beginners. The website for that is cryptobeginnersworkshop.com, cryptobeginnersworkshop.com. Maybe you can link to it. We can do an affiliate link perhaps in the show notes. And so it was a 2-day workshop where I break down all the basics of how to get set up. I'll also step you through setting up a cryptocurrency wallet. That's a free mini course. Setupacryptowallet.com is the website, setupacryptowallet.com. But I think, it's still pretty early on. Now, it's not like it was several years ago when people thought it was weird and some stupid internet money. I was at a gas station in a lower income part of town the other day, and somebody asked me what kind of work I did. I don't know why the conversation sprung up. We're just waiting in line. And I said, I teach people how to use cryptocurrency. And like, oh yeah, cryptocurrency. And then it struck up a conversation with 3 people. And they're like, yeah, what about that Dogecoin? And I purchased it on eToro, right? And there's these more mainstream, simple ways, but not ideal ways to purchase cryptocurrency. Many of these investment apps that were traditionally used for stocks, you don't have custody of the cryptocurrency, meaning this company that runs this application, they have access to your private keys. The private keys are basically what gives you access to the cryptocurrency that you have in a given account, right? And the beauty of cryptocurrency is that if you have those private keys in what's called a non-custodial wallet, which again, I teach how to set that up. It's setupacryptowallet.com. If you have access to those private keys, then no one else can get your money but you. But many folks that are a little bit more mainstream and just getting into it, they'll use these tools and these applications where they buy the cryptocurrency, but they can't take custody of it and truly own it. So it is puncturing in, it has punctured into the mainstream. However, it's still a very, very, very small minority of people that actually own cryptocurrency. And I believe as time goes on, as more people lose faith in central banks and fiat currencies and government, which is a trend that's accelerating, interestingly enough, thankfully, finally, more people are going to be turning to these alternative currencies. And it's possible, Bitcoin right now is one of the top 10 global assets, passing Tesla and up there, soon to pass Google and all these mega corporations, which is pretty impressive for a decentralized cryptocurrency with no board of directors or shareholders. And someday it's possible that it overtakes gold, which is the most valuable asset in the world, valued at over $10 trillion last time I checked. If Bitcoin were to overtake gold, then the price of Bitcoin from where it is today could possibly 10x. So it's also possible that Bitcoin could be some alternative global reserve currency that even governments and large banks start to hold on their balance sheets as a check against inflation. So even though the price is pretty high right now relative to where it was before, now mind you, I've been telling people to get to the left of the decimal point, meaning to try to own a whole Bitcoin. Yes. Since Bitcoin was $500, $1,000, $10,000, now it's $50,000. I still am encouraging people to try to own a whole Bitcoin, because while there are going to be ups and downs, of course, I do think ultimately the price of Bitcoin is going to be well over $100,000, even $200,000. It's just that valuable to people.
Mm. And where do you see, in terms of creating greater freedom, how does crypto become a tool for that greater freedom? And then for a lot of, in terms of trade and commerce, what are the opportunities there from a decentralized perspective?
So it's a great tool for freedom because it can't be turned off or shut down. So in the evolution of digital currencies online, there's this group called the cypherpunks, which I think some of these cypherpunks are the ones that invented Bitcoin. Although the creator is Satoshi Nakamoto, this pseudonym, right? But I think it's some of these guys. And they were trying for many years to create a sovereign, meaning there's no one that controls it or rules over it, a sovereign digital currency. And they kept on running into these problems. One of them was the double spending problem. How can we have a digital asset that can't be copied? And Bitcoin solved that problem. It's a digital asset that can't be replicated because of how the ledger that says who has what Bitcoin, it's stored on over 10,000 computers all throughout the world. And anytime a transaction happens or new Bitcoin is created, that ledger gets updated with a consensus process. So it gets updated everywhere. So if someone tries to create a second Bitcoin or double spend a Bitcoin or a fraction, it's worth noting you can purchase a fraction of a Bitcoin. Many people think that they can't get involved because one Bitcoin is $50,000, but you can buy a tenth of a Bitcoin, you can buy 0.002 of a Bitcoin, right? So you can get started with a small amount of money. But they solved that double spending problem. The other problem was centralization. So there was a company called eGold, for example, that would let people put gold on deposit, and then they would issue these digital tokens. But they got shut down by the man, and they got prosecuted for money laundering. Them not money laundering, but other people were using the platform for money laundering, apparently. And so that was a big problem. But Satoshi Nakamoto, he, she, they, them, created Bitcoin, and it's completely decentralized. And the big innovation for that, and why it's important for our freedom, is because there's no person or group of people or corporation or LLC company or board of directors to pressure and say, you can't do this. We don't have regulations or rules for this. This is illegal, or you need to meet with the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission here in the States, or you need to talk to the Department of Treasury, or you need to have a license to do this, right? It was just created, and now it can't be stopped, which is a very beautiful thing. Now, early on, we all thought Bitcoin was the cat's pajamas and the ultimate freedom currency, right? But as it turns out, Bitcoin specifically has a transparent blockchain. A blockchain is just a series, one block is a collection of information, right? It's all digital, it's all stored on a bunch of computers throughout the world. And each block contains information based on what all the transactions are that just took place, right? And a blockchain is just a chain of these blocks, a collection of all the transactions that have taken place. Well, these transactions and this blockchain is completely transparent, right? So if somebody knows my public address, which is kind of like my account number, so if you wanted to send me cryptocurrency, I would give you my public address and you would send me cryptocurrency. But if you knew that that was my public address, which you would because I sent it to you, or if I posted my public address online, anyone can go take that public address and see the history of transactions. Now, mind you, any wallet, most wallets, you can create a new address for every single transaction, which obscures that history. But it is a transparent and public blockchain, and there now are government firms and private companies that do what's called forensic analysis on a blockchain. So if they can get one entry point of you into the blockchain, they can then track and trace you sending crypto here and there, right? So that's one limitation of Bitcoin. However, there's other cryptocurrencies. There's over 8,000 cryptocurrencies. Most of them are total crap, and I wouldn't bother with them at all. But many of them are really valuable and have some solid utility. They're very useful. And some of those cryptocurrencies, which I believe are going to be extremely valuable as central bank digital currencies become a reality. That's a central bank creating a digital currency that's easily tracked and traced, that can be shut off, that can be tied with a social credit score. If your score drops beneath this, you can no longer purchase items for pleasure or whatever. All your purchase history is easily analyzed. Now, mind you, we're already pretty damn close to that with credit card processing, but this would centralize it in the hands of the central banking institutions. Well, there's coins like Monero, for example, or Pirate Chain, which is really popular in Liberty communities, that are completely private. They obscure every transaction that takes place. There's no information that's visible on the blockchain itself. And it's my belief, as we enter this mark of the beast style surveillance system, that these specific cryptocurrencies, Monero and Pirate Chain, will provide a valuable tool for freedom lovers. Because, everyone's like, don't invest in cryptocurrency, use gold or barter, which is great. And yes, I strongly believe that we also ought to have precious metals, and we also ought to create direct person-to-person networks and connections. But ultimately, like it or not, we're living in a digital world, and it's only going to get more digital. So in order to send value from one person to another, or to send information, which is what cryptocurrency is, it's just information about money, these privacy coins are going to enable us to send money from one country to another, from one city to another, and there's not going to be anything that the state can do about it at all. And then, of course, the internet is controlled in some ways through ISPs, internet service providers, but at the same time, now we're having decentralized internet protocols, like the, I forget what it's called, but there's multiple file sharing programs, and there's multiple alternatives to the DNS system, for example. Interplanetary file sharing system is one, IPFS. That's where people are taking their websites that are getting censored and shut down here and there, or delisted in some instances. It's rare, but it could happen. And they're putting it on this IPFS decentralized internet, and it can't be taken down. It's backed up in perpetuity. So it's really hopeful and promising. And I encourage people that think Bitcoin or cryptocurrency is part of this New World Order plan to really take more of a deeper look at it. Yes, there are central bank digital currencies come into play, which aren't cryptocurrencies at all. Yes, this technology can be manipulated in some ways and leveraged, but at the same time, we can also leverage this technology for freedom, for privacy, and it's just all about your perspective and what you choose to do with this technology that gives it its meaning.
Thank you, John. Yeah, so that's fantastic overview of how this can help support kind of the next evolution of finding our own freedom. And for those watching, we'll make sure we share those links that John shared. And we've got more guests coming up in the near future to talk more about cryptocurrency and the opportunity available. Now, the next big piece I'd like to explore with you, John, is the fact that, well, just today I was at a rally in Wales, a demonstration against vaccine passports. Vaccine passports, certainly, I don't know what the state of play is in the US, but here in the UK, threaten the very basis of our liberty, create a stratified or segmented society based upon those who are vaccinated or unvaccinated. And that could be, as we know, could be the very beginning of further divisions going forth in terms of what these kind of centralized powers enable people to do in terms of limiting people's access to society, goods, supplies, etc. And lots of people are now looking to create parallel societies, alternative economies, the great renaissance of the kind of speakeasy bars and whatnot, where most people's heads tend to go, if I can't go to the pub, what am I going to do? For some. So I know you've been doing a great deal of work in this space, looking about building intentional communities and looking at how people can get out of the matrix, so to speak. Could you give us an outline of this exit and build strategy that you mentioned earlier on?
Yeah, sure. So, the vaccine passport thing, I think early on in the pandemic, I started to realize, because even before the vaccine was rolled out or created, or I don't even like to call it a vaccine, actually, the injection, or it's some experimental weird mRNA technology with weird stuff going on inside of it, apparently. But I kind of realized, wow, this is just a big marketing campaign to take the jab. All of the messaging started gearing up towards that. The goal is to create so much fear in people and anxiety and dis-ease that people will rush and willingly take this jab. And as it turns out, they really got to do a lot of pressure now. I think the numbers are inflated about how many people have taken the jab worldwide, or else they wouldn't be pushing or forcing so hard. Unless there's something more sinister with the toxin or the jab, like it's some kind of transhumanism agenda or something weird. I honestly don't know, but I know it's not good. But the vaccine passport, of course, is a big part of it because it really amplifies the technocrats' ability to control people. And right now it's a vaccine passport about immunity or taking a vaccine, but it can very easily, once that infrastructure is in place, it can very easily be expanded with a slippery slope to include social credit score type stuff. I very much believe that's where things are going. So one thing that I've always been passionate about for many years now, and my fiance was passionate about as well, was creating intentional communities, right? And I've been in multiple different circles, from the liberty movement, cryptocurrency people, to unschooling and peaceful parents. And everyone always had this dream and this vision of building an intentional community, getting together with a group of like-minded friends, purchasing land and living in community together. And so I really believe, as we see this smart cities agenda taking place, most of this tyranny and control is being ushered in the big megacities. That's where the 5G technology and all the interconnectivity and the Internet of Things, that's where the lockdowns were most significant. For example, I lived and grew up in Austin, Texas my whole life. It's not a mega city, but it's one of the bigger cities in the country. And it's very liberal, not the good kind of liberal, very socialist and hard left. And the city really started declining and decaying, in my opinion. There's still a lot of beauty there. But when it came to the COVID stuff, everyone freaked out in Austin, bought into it. Lots of Democrats, of course, just going along. It's like some sort of virtue signal to wear your mask, and the mask stuff was heavily enforced at first. And then when you drive outside of the city to the rural areas where I live now, I live in a rural county that's connected to Travis County, where Austin is. It's totally different ballgame as far as wearing masks, shaking hands, hugging, people just acting normal. It's a very beautiful thing. So I think there's a lot of reasons to get outside of the city. It's a totally different culture. And what we're hoping to do is to make that case that if we want to find freedom in our lives, rather than fighting the city or running for mayor or going toe-to-toe with competing political movements or whatever, let's just exit. Let's just get the hell out of there. I'm an empowered kind of guy, but I'm also a realist. And I think that in many instances, especially major cities, we just need to seed this seed, as in CED, just admit defeat in the cities and just get the hell out of there, right? I don't see the tide turning. Most of the public is just going along to get along. They don't want to shake the boat. They don't want to put themselves at risk. They're just watching TV all day and buying into the propaganda. But there still exists a lot of opportunity in the rural areas, not just because there's more land and it's easier to be left alone, but because a lot of people living in rural areas, I'm sure it's the same with the English countryside, they are kind of like, there's my friend Ernest Hancock would always say, there's two types of people in this world. Those that want to be left alone, those that just won't leave you alone. And in the country and in the rural areas, there's a lot more of the former people. Those that just want to be left alone. They want to do their thing, have a ranch, go to church, just live their lives. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And my ultimate vision is to encourage like-minded people to move outside of the city, to acquire land, whether individually or cooperatively with other people, and to build communities, whether you have an intentional community with a bunch of people living on the same property, co-owning the same property, or you have your acreage here and you're linked up with the guy that has the acreage over here and the family that has it over here, and folks that don't even think exactly like we do or know this whole conspiracy is going on, but they're just like, we're just good people, we're farmers, we got kids, we homeschool, whatever, and we link up and build community and resilient networks with them. And in order to help people to do this, and in order to empower and inspire people towards this path, we're hosting this summit. It's a free summit. Anyone can sign up. You'll provide the links there in the show notes. And it's going to be November 6th. We're going to do an in-depth immersive thing for ticket holders only on November 7th. Joel Salatin's one of the speakers. He is a huge name. He's like a renegade farmer, libertarian anarchist guy, fought against GMOs. And early on, he spoke out against the pandemic. And he's like, I hope I get COVID-19 to go ahead and get it over with and get immunity, right? But we're going to have Marjorie Wildcraft, Jack Spirko of the Survival Podcast, this woman, Cynthia Tina. She's with the Foundation for Intentional Communities. And the Saturday event's totally free. And we're going to line up all these speakers and we're going to educate people and inspire them to take this path with us. Because a lot of people want to do it. A lot of people have tried it, but it's rather difficult. But it doesn't have to be, because there's strength in numbers. And so we're going to bring all these experts together so they can share the knowledge and hopefully make this goal of moving outside of the city, buying land, growing your own food, creating homeschool co-ops on your own land, growing natural plant medicine, and linking up with a resilient community that trades amongst one another. They employ one another, their kids play together. And I think it's a much better way to live. So we want to help people down that path. And again, that's coming up on November 6th, just in about a month.
Great. Yeah, we put the link in the comments, and they'll be within the episode notes. So thank you for that, John. I think the key. I've got lots of questions around this because this is a topic that's coming up more and more frequently here in the UK. Before I go on to some of the kind of other questions I have around this, I've traveled reasonably extensively in the US, and obviously I'm quite aware of the kind of sizable landmass that you have available to help do these things. Other parts of the world may not quite have the same thing, which I can see in the comments as one of the objections. But I think even in the UK, there is lots of rural areas. And I've spoken to some investors recently who are looking to do exactly what you're talking about, John, to garner the land, to purchase the land, and actually start building from the ground up in a very different way to what we've seen before. What do you think the opportunity, are for people? Do they need to start forming networks of people to look at, sharing the investment to purchase a piece of land, or should they be approaching, existing landowners and talking about renting fields? What do you think some of the initial strategies are?
Well, there's a lot of different paths, right? So one of my businesses is called Live Free Academy, and I have what I call the Live Free Empowerment Philosophy. And it's 4 steps or 4 areas towards finding success or towards achieving your goals. And so in this particular instance, the goal would be somebody who says, hey, I want to buy land or I want to live off the grid in a rural area with some friends. How do I get from here to there, right? There's a variety of different paths. But this 4-part empowerment philosophy, the first part is the mindset. And so that encourages people just to believe in themselves and to make a commitment to themselves that they're going to do this. Oftentimes, you just make that commitment. You don't even have to know how you're going to do it. You just know why you want to do it, and you make the commitment. And then because of that commitment and because of that strong why that's pulling you towards your goal, you figure out a way to make it happen, right? But the second part is to come up with a strategy. I think that's more about the question you're asking, how to get from here to there. The third part is to work with other people to achieve your goal. It really maximizes your opportunities and your ability to get things done when you have a team or you're working with other people. And then finally, take massive action, like massive action, doubling down on your effort, clearing the way, less Netflix, less scrolling on social media, and more action. But there's a variety of different paths to get there. So obviously, if someone has money, they can just purchase the land, taking out a loan, or if they have cryptocurrency, they can use decentralized finance, which would be really cool. If you got a big old stash of crypto, you can use decentralized finance to actually purchase the land that way. Or you can take out a traditional bank with a loan with a smaller bank, ideally. And at least here in the US, in order to purchase a home and land, right, the down payment's like 5 or 10%. So in the US, at least, we're talking about $500,000, $300,000, $600,000. So 10% of that would be $30,000, $50,000. Some loans, you'll just get 5% if you have good credit. It's even less, right? If you don't have that resources now, imagine we like to do things in terms of 8 people in the Freedom Cell Network. 8 people is the optimal number of people in a group to have the most creativity. Any less than that, there's fewer people to get things done. There's fewer ideas and creativity. Any more than that, it starts to get bureaucratic. People aren't on the same page. 8 numbers is the optimal number of people. So imagine, let's say that the property is $500,000 and the down payment is 10%. That's $50,000. $50,000 divided by 8 is less than $10,000 a person, right? And again, it's like, how bad do you want this? If you really, really want it and you commit to making it happen, there's plenty of money in the world, and there's ways to go get that money. Specifically, you provide value to other human beings. This Zig Ziglar, this sales coach, would always say, you can get anything you want in life if you help people to get what they want in life, right? So if you really want it and you don't have $5,000, $8,000 or whatever it takes, then you go out and get that money. Start a side hustle, take on more hours at work, find a commission-based job, start a business, right? But then conversely, like you brought up, if you don't have money and you still want to make this a reality, you could rent on someone's land, a like-minded person. You could do, there's this thing called woof farming. It's where you work on people's land and they let you live there, right? We have a Freedom Cell Network with over 25,000 people. There's tons of people in Great Britain all over that area. And it's a great place to connect with people that maybe already have land or that are desiring to get land. And from there, you can come up with a plan, set your goals, set your intention, and make something happen. But there's a variety of different ways, from purchasing it privately on your own, and then having people rent on your property, or selling subdivided shares on your land, or people coming in as a group, working together, putting the money together for the down payment and then acquiring the land, or working on someone else's land or renting on someone else's land. If there's a will, there's a way. And we're going to provide some of these strategies and ideas a little more in depth at this summit that we're going to be doing.
Fantastic. Now, I know one of the big objections here, even though there's a lot of people talking about these types of approaches right now within the kind of activist community that are challenging a lot of what's happening here, one of the big objections that comes up is, look, for instance, take myself. I've just had a baby. He's 4 weeks old. Family, friends in the communities that I live within, other people, saying, I don't want to move away from where I am currently, but I simultaneously don't want to be part of what's happening. So, some of the interesting conversation we've been having is, what are some of the simple steps that people could be taking? Might be a future goal where they have the opportunity to progress into that space and take some of their friends and family with them if they want to follow that path. But there's some really interesting conversations about some of the simple things that people can be doing, even in their backyard. For instance, my wife and I, are really keen with our natural health, and as such, we want to make sure we're using really, really quality ingredients. And one of the next steps for us is looking at how we can grow some of our own food to take care of our own needs. And of course, lots of people are now talking in communities about clubbing together and expanding that into creating co-ops and different things that people can do to actually take care of the entire community. So what are some of the things like that people can think about if they don't want to go full bore into starting a new community?
Yeah, one middle path too is to purchase like an RV and at least have a bug out spot. All right, so you don't have to spend your whole time outside of the city or in the rural area. But if you can acquire a RV or a trailer or camper, in the US, $5,000 to $10,000 will get it done. And then somebody that already has land, you maybe pay them a small amount, or you work with them, or you help them to get supplies or whatever to prep for a bug out, right? And they let you park the RV there. Then you can still spend time with your family, be connected to the community, raise your kids or whatever. And then if you need to, if things get really ugly, or if there's another lockdown, for example, you get the heck out of there. And then in your RV, you have food storage, you have supplies, you have all sorts of equipment and whatnot. But just there's ways to be more free and to be resilient and prepared living in the city. And of course, growing your own food is a huge example of that. Building a community garden. Curtis Stone, he is a really cool guy. He's got a huge YouTube channel. He spoke at the Greater Reset, part 1, I think part 2 actually. And he talked about, he's in Canada, and he talked about how he and about 5 to 10 friends, they all pitched in and rented a plot of land for little to no money whatsoever, especially when you divide it by 5 to 10 people. And it was like a quarter acre or half an acre. And they managed to produce so much food on their little community garden plot that they had plenty for all of their families. And they even had excess food that they could take to market to sell. So it really just takes, thinking big and like you said, coming up with goals and coming up with a plan. And it doesn't have to be something, it's not like a night and day type thing. To live more free and to change your habits takes a lot of work. But you can kind of sit down with your significant other or your family or your little crew, your little cadre, your Freedom Cell group, and you could do an assessment. So you take stock of where you're at right now in a variety of different areas. This is all exit and build strategy, right? So you got finances, health, food production, safety, community organizing, where you live, how you live, your kids' education, for example. Government schools are not very cool here in the US. I imagine it's the same in England.
Yep.
And so you take stock in each one of those areas. You write it out. Okay, finances. Okay, yeah, I still have a 401k or these legacy financial things that are pegged to fiat currencies. What kind of bank account do I have? Oh, yeah, I have a bank account that's not ideal. Or I already use a credit union, or I don't know if y'all have credit unions over there, or a small bank, a local bank, or whatever that isn't all evil. I don't have a cryptocurrency wallet, but I'd like to learn about that. Okay. All right. What about education? Well, my kids are in government school, and that's not ideal. I've been wanting to take them out. What are the obstacles to doing that? Right. Health. Okay. My wife takes high blood pressure medicine. We still eat fast food every once in a while. McDonald's is one of our guilty little pleasures. And you take stock of all the areas that you can improve upon. And then you just start picking them one by one. And you come up with a plan and some goals. And again, it can be a 1 week goal, or it could be daily habits you're going to change, or it can be like, we don't have the means to get out of the city right now, but we know that we want to and need to. So what's our plan? Okay, we're going to need to come up with the down payment in order to purchase the land. What does that look like? Okay, 25,000 pounds, right? All right, well, how much do we need to set aside each month in order to make that happen? Okay, it's going to take us about 18 months in order to make this happen. Set up an 18-month plan. We need to move this here. We need to move that. We need to convince this person to come with us, yada, yada, yada. Who's going to take care of our parents? How we can come back. Let's get a place that's 45 minutes outside of the city, so we still have that buffer zone, but we're not so far that we can't go visit our elderly parents and be with them and bring the grandkids to spend time with them. So it's all about being conscious about your lifestyle design. Most people in this world, including many people in our community, they just go about their life as though they're playing out a program. Even people in our community, it's like a victim thing, and they're all afraid, and it's like the New World Order and the technocrats and all this stuff is happening. But if you shift your mindset from that of victimhood to empowerment, and you take an active role in the life that you live, and you make a decision that you're going to change things step by step, slowly but surely, or fast with massive action, then you can really start to take control of your life and live a better life and pass on a better future for your children and for your grandchildren, right? It's just all about making that decision. It all starts with the decision and figuring out the strategy, then working with the team, and then taking massive action.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the key thing for me, and quite rightly what you said earlier on. Even ahead of the goals, it's all about the mindset, and this is particularly important more than ever in terms of people's own self-empowerment, because what we've witnessed with all the kind of fear-based propaganda that we've witnessed for 18 months, It's driven people's own sense of personal empowerment through the floor for a lot of people. But then on the other side of that, as you said, you've got the kind of worst case scenario projections of where the next thing could happen, or the next iteration of this centralized authoritarian rollout of whatever's next. And you can get into this fear-based mentality, which then puts you into that victim. And whenever you talk, when I hear people talking about what they are doing, what they have done, it just takes you out of your own personal power. And for me, it's about coming back to what can I do and what can we do in order to move forward, to progress towards this greater vision of the future, and play an active role in building the alternative, in creating the Great Awakening or the Greater Reset. Because right now, I do believe, physically we're entering into winter in the United Kingdom. But what follows winter is spring, and if you take that as a metaphor, spring is the time where we plant the seeds of change. So I think we are about to enter that global metaphorical spring. Yes, we may go through a darker winter first before we reach that point, but I do believe for those people who have their eyes open and are feeling a sense of personal empowerment, we are the ones that will build the future. We'll take hold of the things like the cryptocurrencies that we've been talking about. We'll look at how we can build intentional communities, and we'll start to actually forge a different ideology that the world can look towards. That is decentralized, is based upon personal empowerment, based on communities, based upon love and compassion, and bring these real human values back to the forefront. I think what we've witnessed over the last 18 months is the subjugation of humankind. And I think people are at the end of their tether and really need to find that sense of meaning inside, and a brighter future to work towards. But the reality is that no one is going to paint that future for you. That's my view on this. It's about people finding their vision of the future. And John, it sounds like you've done a lot of self-development and self-actualization work to take you on the path that you're on, and help you find your vision. What are your kind of what would be your parting advice for people to start to find their own personal vision for the future that they want to create?
Yeah. Thanks for noticing that. I used to be a very angry, stressed out person. I would take it out on my ex-wife and my kids, especially. And I had to break out of that because it was not healthy. And I really went heavy into self-development, self-improvement. Tony Robbins played a big role in my evolution. And I actually got to see him in person at this marketing conference called Funnel Hacking Live. And I knew that he was on our side when it came to the COVID stuff. He did this video series about COVID and had doctors talk about the masks and all sorts of stuff, which was awesome. And sure enough, he actually spoke to us for literally 5 hours. It was nuts. We were jumping up in our seats, getting all pumped up and primed. People were hugging one another. And he started off his session for about 12 to 13 minutes, just ripping and railing on the vaccine. And he started off by saying, it's great to see so many people not wearing masks and not living in fear. It's all your choice if you want to do that, but make sure you don't make a decision from a place of fear. And life is risk. There's risk everywhere in life. And you know what if you want a life without risk, then you're not going to be living at all. You might as well be dead. And talk about what's happening in Australia, and started ripping on them. And I was like, wow, this was freaking awesome. But, one of the big takeaways, and this is one of his things he teaches all the time. He says there's 3 ways to change your life. And again, for people in our community, this self-development stuff and this mindset stuff, some people think it's hippie or new age or whatever. There's so many people that are just they think yoga is Satanism. And I think there's just a lot of misdirection and ignorance on a lot of these things. But at the end of the day, the law of attraction and the stuff that Tony Robbins teaches, it's really monumental, powerful stuff that can help us to rise above a lot of the fear and dread and overwhelm that we experience in our lives. And it really is a battle between good and evil, whether that's from a Christian biblical perspective or just positive and negative energy and positive and negative forces, dark and light energy, right? But all this is absolutely critical for our success. If we are to create a better world, we need to get right in our mind, in our heads, and our spirit. But Tony Robbins taught us there's 3 different things that can help improve your life and in turn can help improve our world. And the first is what we choose to focus on, and then what meaning we give things in our lives that happen to us, and then the actions that we take. And these things are all tied together, right? So for people that choose to focus on the New World Order and the technocrats and the vaccine passports and all the tyranny in the world, that's the reality that they're going to live in. However, same circumstances, same world, same COVID pandemic and lockdowns and such. And if instead you focus on the beauty of the free human spirit and all the people that are rising up and the protests that you were just at and the business owners that are defying the lockdowns and all the people that are waking up and being red-pilled right now, you choose to focus on that. You choose to focus on the beautiful butterfly floating around, pollinating the garden and friendship and kinship, right? Then you're going to experience more freedom in your life. You're going to be more free, right? And then when things happen to us, like this lockdown and all this crazy COVID stuff, if the meaning that you give it is we're all screwed, we're going to enter this nightmarish new world order, and I'm afraid of it all, and that's the meaning that you give it, then that's the reality that you're going to live in. But if you choose instead, and we all can choose how we interpret these things and what we focus on and the meaning that we give to them, if instead the meaning is, I now have a responsibility, an obligation, and a duty to act, to make big changes in my life and to help other people make changes in their lives so we can create a better world so our children don't have to suffer from this tyranny and our children's children don't have to suffer from this, and they can live a life with freedom that we never even dreamt of. And that's the meaning that you give it, right? It's the same problem, it's the same situation, it's the same circumstances, it's the same phenomenon, but one person can choose to be victimized by it and disempowered, and another person, because they are consciously choosing and they're in control of their thoughts, they can choose to be empowered by it. They can choose to have it fuel the fire that burns inside of them in order to make change, right? And then the actions that we take based on what we focus on and the meaning that we give things, that motivates us to act. And at the end of the day, it's all about action and taking massive action, as I like to say. So I guess just to part with, to leave folks that we are experiencing a lot of really crazy and scary things, but it doesn't have to lead us to overwhelm, to dread, to a sense of fear. Rather, we can take this as an opportunity to do good in the world and to leave a lasting impact for many generations to come. And I think we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our children and our posterity, and we owe it to the future of humanity to double down on our efforts and to do more good in the world.
Thank you, John, and thank you for sharing your insights and the different elements of the pathway to freedom that we've discussed tonight, from cryptocurrency to intentional communities, and the mindset involved of becoming self-empowered in order to be part of that change-making process. You shared the Exit and Build Summit. Got the link there on the screen, the bit.ly link, Live Free Academy, which you'll find the opportunity to register for John's summit coming up in November. The links will be in the comments and in the notes, so do look out for those. And John, in terms of your content, etc., where can people go to find out more about your work and your thoughts? I know you've got a show, the Live Free show, so could you share just a little bit about where else people can find out more about you?
Yeah, so people can go to livefreenow.show, livefreenow.show. That's the podcast and video show that I do. And then if they want to check out my business, that's livefree.academy, livefree.academy, where I help teach people about cryptocurrency, entrepreneurship, exit and build strategy. It's all about empowerment and taking control over our lives. And and then if you're interested in Kratom, Delta 8 THC, you can check out myBraveBotanicals.com. That's another one of my businesses. And I should say, you learned about me from the Greater Reset. We're doing a Greater Reset 3 coming up in January of 2022. So be on the lookout for that. There's already a little bit of details at thegreaterreset.org, thegreaterreset.org.
Great, John. It's been a real pleasure having you on the podcast here tonight. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you to our audience who participated live in the discussion here. Lots of questions arising and lots to follow up on. So thank you very much, John, for your wisdom, and good night to everyone for watching. And if you haven't already subscribed to the Pandemic Podcast, please just take a moment of your time to head to danjgregory.com /pandemic and join our mailing list so you can be the first to hear about all of our forthcoming interviews and content and campaigns and initiatives that we're driving forward ourselves. So thank you, John, and thank you to our audience, and good night all.